Dragon Shire, but due to the way of how sometimes Tomb of the Spider Queen gets played out, of how you avoid rotations early on, it's not really the most popular of Battlegrounds. What do you make of it?
All I can think about is you asking Kaldor whether he was going to stop being a caster and become a pro player. But yeah, I mean, this is one of those maps where the rotations are, because the rotations are so short, you have to be very careful in terms of how aggressive you want to be in those and how defensive your positioning will be.
All right, Kaldor, I wanted to get back to Magi real quick because he had to fill such big shoes from Swoy. How are you liking Magi's role right now? Do you think he fits in well into the team?
Yeah, I think he does, and they've been talking about this in some of the interviews as well, that they are working really well with him, and I don't really see that there's any big problems with them. When we're coming to the current meta also with the supports, they have been playing an insane amount of Uther throughout the season, for example, and we have seen a lot of that focus on Divine Shield plays. Also the actual stun that Uther has and that we've seen from Malfurion supplied through the root SSCC as well works incredibly well if you're going for these aggressive compositions where you're trying to follow SSC chain up with burst damage to blow a target away, and that is something that we've seen a lot. And given the brawly games that we have seen at the Eastern Clash here so far, I would expect exactly that playstyle from both teams. The Koreans in particular have shown that they are willing to take these team fights and have not really solely focused on macro play that has in general fallen off a bit with the changes that came to 2018.
Now, being a caster myself from HGC China, I'm really interested in seeing how CE is going to plan that or play this out here, because traditionally speaking, if there was one thing that could stop CE oftentimes from winning a series, it was their own drafting. Oftentimes they would pick Tyrael solo tank composition that on paper looked okay, but for some reason it didn't click for them. So anything that you take from the Chinese drafts up to this point and that you think worked out well, and some things that maybe didn't work out well from the Chinese teams?
The Tracer pick.
That was a pretty good one.
Yeah, the Tracer pick, in particular, you'll have to excuse me.
It was on the same battleground
instantly here, yeah. We see it for Challenge, and the Tassadar pick paired with it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We basically see a very similar pattern to what just worked so well for SPT. At first we were a little bit skeptical because Tassadar are not really part of the current global meta necessarily anymore, but for SPT against Blossom it worked wonders.
But here's already a couple of things that we see from Ballistix that I really like. So first of all, we can see that trend that I've been mentioning earlier with them highlighting Uther a lot. We see that continuing. They have him as the main support throughout the entire season. And also when it comes to their front line, they played a lot of Nuburak. They're insanely successful with it. But another of the heroes that we see for the front line, which highlights their aggressive stance in the meta, is Tyrael. And they immediately jump into Uther Tyrael, combat off with Genji, so they have the Divine Shield available. They can aggressively engage and then use Sanctification. And we could still see them go also into any kind of aggressive setup here, with maybe even dropping a Nuburak in if they feel it's enough, having Genji rotate to the off lane to win that against the solo lane that CE is going to throw it there.
I think the thing that they knew, Ballistix knew coming into this draft, was the potential for that Tracer to come in on the other side. So one of the best ways to deal with that, Genji has his deflect. He can basically be protected, by the way. Uther provides that armor. Tyrael has the shielding. They were very well prepared coming into this. They were very decisive in their first few picks. We see the Johanna. So you have the wave clear between Tassadar Johanna on the side of CE, but you're going to need something else. You're going to need some sustained damage on that backside. The problem is with you already locking in the Tracer Tassadar, that makes it incredibly difficult because you still need your support, you still need your solo laner. Tassadar can flex over to that solo, but because the Tracer is there, you've pretty much just cornered yourself draft-wise, and now Ballistix can just kind of do whatever they want around that.
Yeah, you're also in a position where Ballistix, as you said, they have a lot of good tools against Tracer and mitigating the damage already. If you throw a Greymane in here, for example, you can also put a lot on a lot of pressure on Tracer herself. The damage output, you have the tools to allow Genji to go deep if you want to go down that path. So they're incredibly flexible when it comes now to the final picks. They also don't have to go down that path. They can go into a mage, for example, and just say, from a European perspective, you would throw, or you could throw a Gul'dan in. Has been played in Korea as well, not quite to the same extent, but it's an option with wave clear that you have now that you could also use to put the pressure on them.
right, and we see the Blaze coming in here as well already. So a very defensive composition, as Calder pointed to. We have the Uther, strong protection, Turiel on top of that adds AoE shielding, sanctification possibly, and the bunker. So right now, it really seems like Ballistic wants to become this unstoppable force that's just so hard to kill, especially for a Tassadar composition.
Also, when we're looking at the draft, this is just one of those things where you can see that Ballistix is just absolutely not kidding around. We've been asking the entire day, where has Blaze been? We have seen a few games, but if you compare the Western Clash to the Eastern Clash, the priority of Blaze has nowhere been near where we have seen it from the Western scene. And most of the Korean teams have echoed several times that they feel that the European teams are insanely strong right now in particular, but also North America catching up. They watch the Western Clash, and now it's pretty cool that Ballistix goes straight in. They have Blaze in there, they have comboed off with Tyrael, which was the double pick that we've seen on the 1-2 so often in the grand final at the Western Clash. So the draft that they have is just an absolute powerhouse, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, and some of the Korean teams, KSB Black and Ballistix in particular, they really respect the European scene at the moment. They're really like, what we saw at the Western Clash was definitely something to either imitate or at least take inspiration from. For now, we're going to take a quick look here at the predictions. I'm going with my boys from CE, necessarily because I think they have what it takes to maybe cause an uproar or a surprise or two.
Again, Ballistix 100% was prepared for what CE was going to bring.
I do agree with that one.
The Tracer Tassadar pick was extremely countered in the early part of the draft, and then it forced the Cassia pick at the end because you have to have something else. And now that Tassadar pick, being that solo laner, the flexibility and the rotations that you brought up in the first part, I think are going to be very challenging for CE.
Speaking of challenging, also the Twitch chat vote here leaning heavily against challenge, and I can't really blame him because Ballistic is definitely a powerhouse. Many of our commentators and experts actually said that they could be the team to take the whole title.
Yeah, definitely. I think that Ballistix looks fantastic right now, and if they continue that trend, I could see them not only in the grand final, but also winning the whole thing. And as we said before, for CE, this is going to be an uphill battle, and it's going to be interesting to see if they can pull it off.
We'll see if they can pull it off as we do get our series underway with Ballistix versus CE, otherwise known as Challenge here. Tomb of the Spider Queen, Ballistix coming out with a lot of heavy hitters. When we look at Greymane Genji and the dive potential with that Tyrael Blaze, complemented by an Uther there, Calder.
Yeah, especially once we have the Divine Shield, you can extend Genji with the Dragon Blade. You can also allow Greymane to go even deeper. Of course, then on 7, we have that question of what do you want to go here? Do you want to go for the extra range against Tracer? Which is very likely to happen here, but just that setup that Ballistix is running is so scary. The rotation speed of Genji alone to put pressure onto the lanes is a huge asset for them in the early game.
One thing that surprises me kind of right out of the gate is the fact that we're going Thunderstroke build for Cassia. I like it. It's good single target poke, especially if you can land it on a Genji who's diving there. But against an Uther, we generally see that charge strikes because it does do more AoE damage to deal with Uther, and that's kind of where he struggles. But against that heavy dive potential, maybe looking to get some value out of that Q build.
Q build is one of them. It's actually the main focus that we have in Europe. We have occasionally the switch into the old build, but ever since in 2017, I think it was Nurok that started the trend to go into a full Q focus. It has started to become the main game playstyle that we're seeing on Cassia. So it's not really too surprising, I feel, since you have a lot of poke available here then for later on in the game as well. So I personally like it, but I can see what you're saying. Like, there is definitely a lot of potential to drift into the other build as well.
Well, CE, I mentioned this during the draft, is that their solo laner kind of non-existent, so they're kind of switching things up here. Going into this 2-1-2 split, using that Johanna, using that rotational advantage, they're looking to try and get an early camp, but it looks like they've been caught out. Blaze coming in for the stun, the lockdown. It's going to be first blood. Yeah, and that is already a bit of a problem. Not only will you lose that hero, now you also are very likely to lose the camp itself as well, and that's always a problem because it takes the hero away from you. You lost a lot of pressure on the map. You're going to lose the camp now too, and that puts extra pressure onto your own tower. So you have to send forces down to the bot lane to react to it, and that opens up the top half of the map for Ballistix. And they even started using the time they had just to utilize Greymane and getting another camp here as well, just using his clear. So that's already a bad start into the game for CE. Yeah, and generally when you see this and you look over at Cassie, you look over at Tracer, you kind of have the defensive tools to defend against this camp, but you don't necessarily have it in the same manner that you do otherwise. And to basically dive underneath this, if you're on the side of Ballistix, getting some of this early fort damage, you know, Dread and I have talked about this a lot, is getting the value out of this first camp, just softening up that, and if you get that first turn in, you can really put the pressure on and snowball towards 10. So Ballistix could be looking to get very aggressive as they go in here one more time on the Zuyu.
Yeah, Ballistix is already going straight for it. They need to be a bit careful with Hooligan here, and Johanna's trying to re-engage immediately, but the camp is still on, and the Aura is helping out a lot. Aluful missing the bomb here, getting stunned and immediately attacked. Has to go for the rewind, but is taken apart on the back end. Tracer dead now once again, and Ballistix having a great start into the game and resulting into 2 against 0 kills and a half-level lead already.
Caldor, they talked about the synergy with Magi, and you could see that he realized, look, Tassadar got the shield in, but Magi flanked up into that position. He got the stun, recognized Tracer was going to have, that was her exit route. He ended up getting the stun there, that second stun, to help get that lockdown there. So good coordination early by Ballistix.
And just to spin the narrative a little bit more of what we've seen, that fight in the mid lane was forced through the early camp that could be taken, and that was only because so many forces had to be drawn down to the bot lane by CE to take the camp that they early on were trying to sneak here. So Ballistix map awareness and realizing that the Siege Giant camp was attacked and then stealing it away and getting that kill forced this entire little snowball that we saw here that accumulated in the fight around the Aura in the mid lane. So it was really well done by Ballistix here, and CE is currently playing a bit of a catch-up game.
Yeah, they're playing a catch-up game, and right now, Ballistix does have enough for a turn-in. They're 4 short, got 18 in the bank there, as we're going to see Hooligan should be able to get that confirmed, does have that confirmed. We're going to have our first Webweaver phase of the game. They will need to clear out this Knight camp here in the middle, as that spell armor you had mentioned is definitely in effect.
Yeah, Ring of Leech now also taken on the side of Cassia, and that can especially be powerful against Greymane if he starts to engage later on and you get that blind off, and you can always help yourself here a little bit for the extra sustain. So they have a couple of blinds against Greymane. That's definitely going to be a great tool, but at this point the aggression and the coordination again, as Cassia is just blown to pieces. No chance for CE to keep her alive.
They've got her firmly in her sights. Zuyu on that hero has got to be careful of his position. Remember, Cassia does have the shorter auto attack range sitting at 4. Your standard auto attack range on heroes, 5.5, so you're going to be a little bit closer, but I think he's got to be a lot safer in his position.
Yeah, it's definitely rough for them. They are trying to play with this double support idea at this point, and of course, ideally you want to make sure that Tracer has enough support and can basically create the space then so that Cassia can get the damage in without even being contested here, and Tracer zipping around occupying the opponent, but that's just not working out at all. In theory, the double support can still be played, but it has fallen off significantly after the changes last year, and while Tassadar is still strong with the utility he offers on the map, Vision for example, they are falling so fast behind in this game that it's going to be extremely rough for them to ever catch up. I mean, just look at the experience discrepancy that we see here. Level 10 nearly being picked up off Ballistix just off that first turn-in, and a fort already taken away. If they get 10 now and get the second turn-in, then we're going to see a very traditional European snowball against CE.
And that right there is textbooks in terms of teams that have figured out the meta in terms of how to get that first turn and get that snowball. It's to soften up that middle lane with the first camp pickup, split off to the top bottom. Dignitas does this really well also. You kind of move back into that middle lane, start to push in onto that fort, and all of a sudden you've got yourself a 1.5 level lead, a structure advantage, and the snowball potential.
And I love the Siege Giant camp that has been picked up. Now it's going to be extremely difficult for CE to even just poke and try to trying to disrupt any turn-in attempts that we are seeing, because Ballistix is about to have the gems they need to get another Webweaver phase, and now they're pushing at the bot lane with the camp. CE needs to go back down, defend there, and in the meantime Ballistix can turn in. They have 38 gems turned in already, they have 18 ones, and if they can even get kills here against Tassadar, it's very likely then it would be even rougher. But the shield is there, Tassadar moves away, and let's see if Johanna can get out of this one.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of really good body blocking so far. There's going to be a stun landing wind. See the Swift Strike going in. SE trying to make sure and get a little bit of deflect value, trying to stack that up. We'll see if he tries to go into, if it even makes it to 20, on whether he wants to go that full deflector out.
And at this point the game is a nightmare for CE. That first map is not looking pretty. 4 kills against 0 for Ballistix, a 2-level lead only 7 minutes into the game, and now we not only have still the Siege Giant camp active at the bot lane, we see the Knight camps in the middle, and to add insult to injury, we're also having now Webweavers appearing on the map. They are going to heavily push with this, but it's actually CE who managed to get the turning completed here, so Ballistix missing out on having everything pushing in their favor.
And that's the problem, though, is that while they did get the turn in, they just now hit 10. the top was already cleared out. Middle was there trying to push against the Knights, and then the bottom, as you said, the Siege Giants were there as well. So the lanes were so far pushed out that I don't know if they're going to get the value that they had hoped for.
But to be absolutely honest with you, I think from their perspective, that was a bit of a saving grace move, because if they do not get that turn in, then Ballistix completes their own. And if you have both of those mercenary camps pushing and then Web Weavers on top of that as well, you are very likely that you're actually going to lose out on a keep already. And that is actually pre-10 minutes. So that would have been insane from CE's perspective. But Ballistix is still in a commanding lead when it comes to experience. And as you mentioned, because of the situation, you buy yourself a little bit of breathing room, but you don't actually get any structure damage done, which means that you are not catching up in experience.
Dangerous moment here, CE, and we have not seen Ballistix pull the trigger. We've still got Sanctification. We've got that Dragon Blade. We've got the Divine Shield. There are so many tools to go in. Oh yeah, by the way, Bunker. But now we're going to see 13 kind of approach here for Ballistix, as well as the Web Weaver turn it. Hooligan standing on point. He's looking for a fight.
Sanctification comes down. They're going for the camp. They're going to get it. And Johanna is already down. They take the camp. The Bunker's on the ground as the second kill comes in. Dragon Blade has been used, and Cassia is the second victim of the fight. Perfect situation now for Ballistix in a 5 versus 3 situation with the camp pushing through the middle. The Web Weavers are coming down bot lane, already being prepared by Blaze as he pushes it in. 13 is in their hands now as well. All the advantages in Ballistix' favor. Even getting another kill. Tracer is down, and CE is just getting wrecked in this first game.
Hooligan with that holy ground locking Tracer in. Yeah, you've got mobility, but you cannot pass through that. And getting locked out there by Hooligan. Good play. We're going to look at one keep going down, potentially two. We're going to see if Ballistix might try and really put that nail in the coffin here early on Tomb of the Spider Queen.
Again, we have pre-10 minutes and we're already talking keeps here. Shuyu is in so much trouble. He's down again. Cassia not having a lot of fun in this game. The body blocks are real as Wind is attempting to get out. But in the bot lane, the Web Weaver's already working straight on keep number 1. The mid lane is also not looking too healthy. Tracer is down again. This is just a nightmare for CE.
It is a nightmare indeed, and that is a 4-level lead. Ballistix is approaching the core, and they could be looking to hit that hammer, get that nail in the coffin, as we mentioned, and send this early. The shields have fallen, the core is falling. That is game number 1 going over to Ballistix in dominant fashion. 10-minute
game here as Ballistix closes it out. 10 kills against 0. So they're actually pulling off the perfect game here, unless we are seeing Genji fall or Uther. But Magi Divine shielded himself, and this is game, a 4-level lead, making it look like a quick match here. 10 against 0 kills, and very impressive performance that we saw out of Ballistix.
Yeah, very, very dominating performance by Ballistix, and you gotta wonder, like I talked about CE's biggest weakness sometimes being their own drafts. And if you took a look at that draft, you didn't really know where they wanted to go with it. They had a double support Taster comp, which worked for SPT, but in generally isn't really in meta right now. And then their kill potential was also very limited, Jalen.
They committed to it early, and again, they showed so much that they basically, when the first 3 picks came back from Ballistix, they're like, well, this is not going as we had hoped. And it's just you show your hand that early and you run into that problem. And again, the Cassia pickup was basically almost necessary just to try and salvage that, but at that point it seemed like the draft was already lost.
Yeah, and you brought up the Cassia. It's very interesting. When we had the player interviews, it was SPT's Misako who actually said Chinese teams at this tournament, they cannot afford to draft the Cassia because Korean teams know exactly how to counter it.
And we come back to one of the things that we always experience in international events, that you have metas clash and ideas clash, and everybody's trying to figure out, okay, who has the better approach to the game, who has their priorities right. And I feel one of the advantages of the Eastern teams in general is that the Western clash happened before this tournament. So you could really just look, okay, what is the West thinking? Not only Europe, but also what is North America currently prioritizing, and how do those two just mash up against each other. So from that, you can actually take a lot and also learn a lot. And I think from the draft that we've seen so far today from China, that hasn't really happened. Whereas Korea has still their own flavor, but they have still like a core concept that is very similar to what we've seen in the Europeans, since they acknowledge that the Western teams are currently quite strong and have figured a lot of this out.
Yeah, you